everyone. Welcome. Hello from sunshiny Bloomington, Indiana. My name is Tatiana Kolovou. This is the stronger newsletter version of Live Office Hours. I'm so excited that you're with us. And if you are and just jumped in, please feel free to jump into the comments and tell me where you're coming from. Happy 1st of December, Kalomina, as we say in Greek. I've gotten all these messages from my friends in Greece saying Happy New Month. And that's definitely one of the wishes that we give all of you as we enter the month of the holiday season, which tends to be a little bit hectic always. The past stronger newsletter that I sent out to all of you was about pitching yourself in a networking setting while you're looking for an opportunity to move jobs, or you are looking to introduce yourself and just increase your network in general. Welcome, Jeanette. Welcome. So I thought it would be a great idea to finish the live office hours by inviting one of my favorite people, an instructor, a friend, a colleague, and I'll introduce him in just a little bit. I see that we have someone from Croatia, New York City, Houston, Colorado, and Romania, my neck of the woods in the Balkans. So Scott Mautz is the author of 3 books, one of which we're going to do a raffle for and giveaway today. I'll talk about it in just a little bit. Scott is a colleague in that we both teach in the Kelley School of Business, Indiana University's executive programs. But Scott was a high-level senior executive at Procter & Gamble and now runs his business as a speaker and a trainer and a keynote speaker specifically all over the world. He's going to come to us live from Cincinnati, Ohio. Scott writes for Inc. magazine. You may have seen him around, and we will make sure to drop in his link. Now, mind you, before I bring Scott in, and I'd like everyone to reach at their desk, and this is Scott's book, Leading from the Middle. We'll have him tell you a little bit more about it, but we're going to raffle one of these. So you want to stay in the chat. We're going to do it in a very creative way. Scott, welcome to Live Office Hours Stronger with Tatiana Kolovou. I'm going to put my glasses on to see Bloomington, Indiana, learning from Tatiana. Ashek, my friend, my goodness. He was in my very first or second class at Indiana. Let's stay in touch. Ryan Thompson, shouldn't you be in class? Let's see. He's one of my students. So in our MBA program, we talk so often about pitching yourself. I'm going to turn it over while I'm seeing where everyone's coming in from. Welcome you, Scott. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us about how you now pitch yourself and what you do and how that has changed through the years.
Yeah, thank you, Tatiana. Thanks for giving me a chance to be in front of your lovely audience. And by the way, with such a dramatic intro, I would hope your viewers probably want a more appealing reveal image than me in a hotel room in Cincinnati, Ohio. But this is what you get.
You're on travel. You can be in a hotel room. I love it. I see so many people that I know here. Some of my Greek friends. Will from Philadelphia, fantastic to see you. It's so great to see. You can't see all the names coming through, Scott, but it's quite invigorating. I gotta provide you the motivation to do these lives.
Sounds great. I love it. Hello, everybody, as you come rolling in. What I thought would be helpful, Tatiana, is kind of maybe working backwards. Would it be helpful if I started first with kind of the most recent kind of bit of networking and career movements that I've had to do, which are when I left corporate and pivoted to what I do now for a living, to help people to understand? Because I know you're going to have a lot of viewers out there that are maybe they're older, maybe they're late in their career and professional change, are probably wondering, hey, I'm thinking about pivoting. How do I think about that? How do I talk about that? Would that be helpful?
How do I present myself? For sure. And then I want to talk about other things too, and definitely your newsletter, which I'm saving that as the surprise too. But tell us a little bit, how did you pivot and how did you talk about that?
Yeah, you bet. It's a really common question that I get. And when I say pivot, so that everyone's really clear, Tatiana mentioned a little bit about it in the introduction. I was in corporate, Procter & Gamble for over 24 years, was running some very, very large businesses, and turned down the opportunity to keep doing that at a higher and higher level to do this, to broaden my platform for making a difference with the written and the spoken word. So I got an awful lot of practice of talking about that pivot with prospective clients. For many of you out there, that prospective client might be a new, a new company that you're trying to break into. For me, the person that I have to talk about my pivot with are potential clients that can hire me for keynoting, to come in and do workshops, to come in and give a class, and give a training or something like that. So I have learned quite a bit about talking pivoting late in my career. And I want to share kind of 4, I think, power tips with the audience here on how to talk about pivoting, especially if you're changing your career and especially if it's later in your career. First thing you have to do is remember, it's unlike other conversations in that as you talk about the pivot, you have to answer the unspoken questions, which are, and I'll give you an example. Tatiana, I know you're really big on giving examples. I know that from teaching with you and seeing you teach and all that.
For example,
answer the unspoken, which is people are going to be wondering, why this? Why are you pivoting to this? Why now? Do you have conviction as you're pivoting? It's unspoken questions on everybody's mind, because a pivot would mean you're doing something different, maybe a different industry, a different job, a different speed, a different location. And people are going to want to know, well, why are you doing it? Why now? And do you have conviction behind it? So you have to first be ready to answer the unspoken questions. And you want to answer those with confidence and fearlessness. You want to talk
love that
about
word.
Yeah, you want to be fearless, because remember, a lot of people don't have the courage to pivot. And if the recipient is wondering, well, why did you choose to pivot? They're going to be checking, they're bringing some of their own baggage to the table, and they're thinking, man, I would be nervous to make that move that you're making.
Yeah.
You don't want them to project that on you. So you have to be really show just fierceness, like, I believe this is the right thing. I know it's the right thing. Here's why it's the right thing. And this is key. Here's why it brings meaning to me as well. Yeah, Tatiana, please go.
I want to piggyback a couple things. I see a lot of the guest lists here. I have several of my MBA students who have left careers 6 or 7 years, some of them in the military, some of them civilian jobs like yours in project management, in content, in many different fields, leave their lives, come to MBA school to sit at their desks and take that role of a student, and then have to pitch in a networking setting of, here's what I have learned, not that I'm changing and I'm pivoting. I also see, for you and for our audience to know, Scott had a very secure, I remember, I think we were teaching in Kelly's executive education together right when you made the move. You already were running. How many people did you supervise? Like 50, if I'm not mistaken?
A lot more than that.
More than that, right?
I'll leave it at that. A lot more than that.
So a lot of people that you're stepping away and making a bold and risky move. So all the ones of you that are thinking, would I ever be brave enough? Would I be bold enough to be able to do something? My belief is, my friends, we live once. I don't want you to feel or wonder what if. Scott has not asked that question because he did take the risk and he did do it. And you can hear that in his conviction. Thank you, Scott, for letting me butt in.
Anytime you want, Tatiana. Last time I checked, this is your show. And as you're answering the why, by the way, Tatiana, you can tell me if you agree with this. It's really important when you're explaining why you've made this pivot to a new potential person that's going to hire you, why it brings meaning to you. And this is important, not why it's important because you want to make more money, why it's important because you want to change locations, you're tired of living in the Midwest, but why it brings meaning to you at this point in your life. And the reason that's important is it shows the seasoning, and it turns what could have been a disadvantage, the fact that you're pivoting, into an advantage. And it shows that this person is worldly. They can articulate to me how this new career pivot is meaningful to them in their life. It's profound to them. And it helps reinforce the conviction with which you're selling the point that you're pivoting to begin with.
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah.
Second power tip here. This one's really important. I'm talking here for anyone that's just joining, how to talk about a career pivot, especially if you're doing it later in your life. And let me know if you can see this on screen here, Tatiana. Can you read this word? Is it too light or?
Stealth. Move it up a little. Yes, stealth.
I'm going to hold this up. The second tip is to remember the acronym STEALTH, because it stands for show them everything, always led to here.
I'm
going to repeat that. It's a way of helping them connect the dots to convince them that this pivot, everything you've been doing in your life is leading up to that. So remember the stealth strategy. Show them everything always led to here.
I love it.
And it's important, I think, Tatiana, because you want to make the connection for the audience. They're already wondering, why did you make the pivot? And if you could tell a story of, oh no, it's been part of almost a plan. Even if it's a wild pivot, even if I'm making this up, you're in insurance and now you want to go into, accounting or brand management.
Yeah.
If you can tell show it as a journey, I did these things, everything I was doing led up to where I was today. For example, I still get asked, right, when people are investigating whether or not they're going to hire me as a keynoter or somebody else. One of the things I know they're sensing here, Tatiana, I'm just going to be a little vulnerable with you now and your audience now, is sometimes there's this own belief that, oh, wait a minute, ex-corporate guy, now a keynoter, must be he couldn't cut it in corporate life. There's this bias about that, and it is not true. Like, you can't do what we do as keynoters and have been bad at your job. So I find that, using the stealth strategy, I like to show them everything always led to here. I like to tell them, well, I spent 24 years in corporate. I started speaking to small groups within P&G. That led to larger groups. That led to this. That led to that. And this is always my money line I use with a prospect. Everything I've been doing has led to this career pivot. And then all of a sudden you see heads nodding and they're like, oh, wow, this person has had a plan. And even if you hadn't had a plan, if it was accidental, they see it as a threat, and it justifies everything that you're pivoting towards it. It makes you even seem wise, and that it increases their belief that you're going to be successful at it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, so true. Anything you say should connect the dots. Any message that you send should connect the dots. And at some point before we finish, I do also want to say, at the end of an introduction of here's who I am and here's what I do, should connect also to your audience. Everything is about your audience. And a lot of our audiences here coming in should be thinking, what do I say at the end? Because you and I may be conversing in a networking session, holding a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. And at some point I should say, Scott, this is kind of what moved me, what my purpose is. Tell me more about you. So you want to create that into a conversation, because for the ones of you looking for jobs, something that the person will say will allow you then to use that as an anchor, or to go back and send a LinkedIn message or a note and say, we talked about this and what you said was important. So not only everything you do has a purpose, connects the dots, but also you can think about your audience. Speaking of our audience, Croatia to Colorado, we have people from Romania, Dubai, Ghana, Brazil, all my friends from Bloomington here, but so many friends from, I must say, from my home country of Greece. Hello from Atlanta, someone originally from Greece. I love just seeing the international reach of this platform. It's really engaging. So speak with conviction. So when you explain what your pivot is, or you talk about your authentic pitch, you believe it. Number one, right?
That's right.
Number two, show that you came here for a reason, connecting the dots, what makes sense. There is a plan, a method to your madness. What's the third one?
That's two more for you. The third one is, don't forget to talk your transferable skills. Especially important for a pivot, because you may have to connect dots on the skill front too, not just why you're pivoting, but the skills you bring to the party. And they will be there. For example, I know, Tatiana, you and Brenda are communication experts. I can guarantee, is there any more skill that's more transferable than communication? Not that I'm aware of, but you make a list of the skills in your past life and be prepared to show the bridge to, in your pivot, how all the things you learn there are going to make you stronger in this pivot, so that the person isn't assuming everything you did before was a waste of time. It's about transferable skills. And then fourth tip, and I'll take questions, or we keep going on to the next topic. It's really important that you reposition the pivot, meaning don't approach a discussion where you're explaining why you're pivoting. There's some of that they have to do, but what I find is that when people are explaining a career pivot, they get into this mode of almost like, I have to convince you why I've pivoted. You have to do some of that, but you also have to reposition that pivot to turn it into why it's an advantage that you are pivoting, getting
Mm-hmm.
away from explaining to say, because I'm pivoting, I bring these skills. I bring this wisdom. I have a broader set of experiences now. I feel like it's going to make me stronger in this way and stronger in that way. And if you can do that, you just flip the whole conversation, and they're not wondering anymore about why you pivoted. Maybe they're thinking like, maybe I should pivot because it's the
Yeah.
right thing to do.
And
So remember to talk your transferable skills and reposition your pivot, not to explain it, but to tell why it's an advantage that you are pivoting
before they ask it. For
before they
me,
ask it.
I don't usually talk about what I do from a pivot standpoint, although going from human resources to teaching, it kind of made a little bit more sense from learning and development. Part of me is I teach people how to speak with conviction, how to pull stories together and be persuasive. English is not my first language. So when I first speak to people and they go, now, where are you really from? Although sometimes I think that doesn't matter. Do I persuade you in this way? It's kind of funny, but in my mind, based on what you're saying, don't let them think about that first. You should be addressing it. You may wonder, what is a Greek doing teaching people how to speak when that's not my first language? Well, actually, I bring that perspective because a lot of my students come from a different part of the world, and our world is so global, and I bring value to that. So that's how I pivot that. We have Anthony here. I want to share his. It's more of an aha versus a question. And for all of you, I must say, I'm so honored you're all taking time to do this on December 1st. There's lots of more going on in the first month. But Anthony says, aha, I'm transitioning from the military and HR, and now I'm pivoting to facility management. My conviction was the hardest part to build. Great tip. How would you coach Anthony to speak about his connecting the dots if you were working with him?
Yeah, Anthony, just based on your comment that the conviction was the harder part for you, I'll focus in on that for just a second. I think it just would be really important, Anthony, to step back and remind yourself of the reasons why you personally are doing it, why it's important. Don't even worry yet about convincing somebody else what you're doing, that you're moving into facility management. Just reground why it's important to you, why it brings meaning to you. Maybe it brings personal learning and growth. Maybe it's a lifelong goal. Maybe you're dying for a new adventure in your life. Revisit why it's important to you so that when it's time to explain to somebody else what you're doing, why you're pivoting, the energy is contagious. The passion comes out. You've reconnected to the meaning that it brings to the table for you, and the audience can't help but get caught up in it, and they'll forget whatever doubts they may have had about the new place that you're in. They'll get caught up in your conviction and believe that, man, with this kind of confidence, I have no doubt this guy's going to nail it.
Yeah, yeah. A fellow non-English as a first language speaker says she's an ELA teacher, English as a learning. What ELA stands for, Shanaz, I'm blanking on it now, where she says it's not my first language either. Lived experience as a language learner informed my teaching practice as well. So much of what we do, I think what you're saying here too, Scott, is what we bring to the table is part of that energy and that life experience. What happens with some of our learners who are newer to the game? Some of the people here jumping in may be just finishing their undergraduate. My daughter is getting to be on the job market. How do you, they're not pivoting, they're entering. And I consider both of having an authentic pitch being really important. What do you propose?
Yeah, a few thoughts on, if I may, Tatiana, just pitching yourself in a network setting in general, right? Whether you're new or you're not, right? I think that's what you're asking. And
Yeah.
a couple of thoughts, especially for people that are newer at this. This is really, really important. I know this sounds obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen people not do this. It's so important to enter a network setting, not only prepared, but with a clear goal in mind. Is there a person that you really want to make sure you make an impression on? Is there, do you just want to information seek? Do you want to get a certain point across? But I've seen, you've probably seen it too in student gatherings, Tatiana. You get what I call the wanderers. They wander around in networks hoping that they're going to magically impress somebody and a job will appear. You have to be focused, have a goal of what you're trying to do. That's the kind of the first half. Let me pause on that and make sure you agree with that and that makes sense to you. And I have a couple other tips.
Absolutely. Of being mindful, even of just sometimes it may be just practicing their networking, practicing that back and forth. It's great to see you here. How was your travel? It's great to see you here. I know you're from Procter & Gamble. You had a great performance in your Q4, saw that or read about it. Be prepared and looking at your audience. My friend Shanaz said it was English language arts. I wanted to follow up with that too. So having a goal, even if it's practicing some of the skills, if you're newer at this, or if it is practicing speaking out your pivot. I'm going to pause for a little bit, and in the maybe Natasha, we can talk about Udly.ai. There's for the ones of you that are working on interviewing, and I'm going to pop a question here next on interviewing. You should be practicing speaking and answering some impromptu questions, and there's some good tools to help you do that. Our friend Didi says, I have a challenge when the interviewer is caught in what they want versus listening to hear what I can bring to the table. So I get stuck how to explain my transferable skills. So I'm guessing that Didi is saying the interviewer is looking for some specific skills and they don't see what it is that she's sharing. I'm guessing that's the communication here. We're going to go with that. Whoops. We've got a lot of comments here. I've got to hide some of this and I'll bring it in. So let me find this comment again. Dang, someone else should be running the show. All right. So Didi is saying here specifically, I have a challenge when the interviewer is caught in what they want versus listening to hear what I can bring. Didi, my thought with that is have in your pocket, say your transferable skills are managing people or translating data in one section and then being able to do it. You can have several, for example, sentence stems in your back pocket. If you only have a for example, when I did this, or for example, another time that I did this, and you're showing how the skills transferred, you should have several examples that you can help the interviewer further understand that. Would you say anything to that, Scott?
I think that's exactly right. And what we used to do at, interesting, long time ago, I would come onto the Indiana University campus as a recruiter from Procter & Gamble. I led the recruiting team for P&G for 10 years. And when you have a full day of back-to-back interviews, by the end of the day, you've heard 12, 13 in a row. The people that stuck out to me were the people that are doing exactly what Tatiana says. And they have 2 or 3 really compelling stories to tell to bring a point to life. So in the case that Didi was making, when it sounds like the interview isn't really appreciating listening what I want to say, you have to re-engage them with stories. Stories engage us all. So if you have really good stories to demonstrate those transferable skills, you'll bring that person right back into the conversation and get them interested. And that's a side door way to sell that transferable skill.
Absolutely. I hear here someone else, their challenge, and we could do this all day. Roberta says, this is great info for a networking experience, but what about pivoting in a cover letter when your resume doesn't align with the position? Part of what we're talking about, you should be able to communicate in the letter as well. You can say, you can note that that's your job to do that, Roberta. Or in a LinkedIn, sometimes there's not an opportunity to provide a cover letter. When there is not an opportunity, and if you make it to the interview part or you're able to introduce yourself, you should assume that the person will be asking, what is this person doing from here to here, and incorporate some of Scott's 4 points to get ahead of the game to be the one to explain it. I hope that that helps you. A cover letter is a gift where you can translate the pivot. If not, you need to be ready to communicate that.
That's right.
Scott, we have so many comments and questions. I've lost the ball here as we go through. Remember, you want to, in my newsletter this month or in November, I talked about not hiding some of the the gems that your experience has. I had one of my students talk about, or telling me at the end of his introduction, that he was practicing jujitsu. And I know from my husband has done that in the past, very strong mental skills and strategy. It's sort of like physical chess. And he had hidden that in his introduction. And we were able, and in a way, in the newsletter, we show an example of that. Try to think of the pieces that make you unique. So, Scott, what would you say when you introduce yourselves? What are a couple of the titles that you use that make you unique and can stand out?
Yeah, I have a similar thought to that. From a title standpoint, I probably usually start with something that describes the what I'm trying to bring to my audience, to my audience as a keynote speaker. So I talk about, I usually introduce myself as hey, I'm a riveting keynoter that provides maximum value. Some descriptive words that help the audience take away something more than a bland title. What I also try to do, and I really encourage this, anybody that's newer to networking or not, is remember that when you enter into a networking discussion, a networking environment, most people focus on, well, what do I want the audience to know about me? Yes, of course you want to do that. Don't forget to also focus on the other 50% of your energy. What do I want the audience to feel about me? It's the Maya Angelou strategy. The great poet Maya Angelou once said that people may forget what you said, but they'll probably never forget how you made them feel. And boy, you can make an impression on somebody. When I would go through a day of interviews at Indiana University, when I was on the other side of the interviewer table, I always went back to who made me feel something. I can't remember what everybody said, but I remember people that made me feel something, some emotion. Going in with that is really powerful, Tatiana, because let me give you an example. For example, you can tailor that. Let's say you really want a sales job, making this up. You go into a networking meeting about sales. To be a salesperson, you got to be energetic. You got to be sharp. You got to be witty. You got to be funny. You show up that way to create that feeling for the audience. Yeah. Different example. Maybe you really want to be an accountant, and that analytics, thought, taking time to pause, careful listening is really important. You show up making your audience feel that way as well. So in addition to titles, I always ask myself, what do I want the audience to feel about me? And I focus on making sure I elicit those emotions rather than to just concentrate on the words I'm going to use. Right? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I teach warmth and competence. People judge you on warmth, and then they expect to hear some of the competence skills. You need to have them in words, but that energy you bring is important. I'm going to just start dropping in some of these, and I'll let you think about Mayur's question a little bit. I'll address it first since I've seen it. He's gone from a clinical physical therapist to a more management role, probably of the clinic. What should be my best approach to getting into business development roles? And that's a natural progression. I would say attending physical therapy sessions myself. I know that these are science minds that are trying to analyze a situation and identify a problem and get you to maximum performance. And you can communicate some of that, of doing that for the business as well, because a lot of the physical therapy units are competitive. It's definitely a big business, and you definitely would have the credibility to, with some training, be able to transition into the business development role. Again, pitching it from that mindset, thinking of problem solving and analyzing situations. What would you say to this, Scott?
Yeah, I think that's excellent, Tatiana. And I'll go back a little bit to what I was saying. Mayura, I really do believe you have a lot of transferable skills. Tatiana is right. It feels like a natural progression to me as well. Clinical physical therapist to business development. I bet if we sat down and brainstormed, the three of us, Tatiana, you, me, I bet we'd come up with 20 transferable skills that you could focus on to make the bridge seem like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I really do think, I go back to the stealth strategy, STALTH, show them everything, always led to here. I bet you could have an emotional, powerful story about how what you learned on the front lines of physical therapy drove, and I'm making this up here, drove you to want to have an even broader influence through more patients in a management role? You get the idea.
Yeah.
When you start to craft that story, it can really help the audience understand why you wanted to move from A to B and that it was always intended to be that way.
Or it could be definitely helping the business scale up, because what you all do as physical therapists is give people better quality of life. And if you can develop the business more, you can do that for more people. This would maybe harder for Mayor if he said, I want to go into business development for a chemical engineering company. In this case, he has the skill set that can transfer and the credibility to lead people in this kit because he is trained in the skill. If he was switching to a completely different industry, he would probably have to catch up on some of the education, wouldn't you say?
Oh, there's no doubt in that. There's no doubt
Yeah.
in that. This is why, I'm excited for you, Mayor.
I know it sounds awesome too. I'm going to drop in another question from Chantel, and Natasha, thanks for signaling these for us. What have been the most effective strategies you've implemented when pitching yourself doing a career pivot? Scott and Tatiana currently pivoting from operation to more of a people-centric role and would like some tips. So our friend Chantel is going through day-to-day operations into managing people. The first thing I'd want to say is if you have a good rep, if you are able to operate well in what you do, this is probably, Scott, what you did initially. Weren't you more tactical and then you ended up managing people at P&G?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so
that's right.
If you were good at what you did, then you were able to support other people in also doing this well. And Chantel, it would go from knowing your craft and being able to coach others to also perform better.
Yeah, and you can also apply. Look, working in operation takes discipline, and guess what? So does managing people. And some of the worst people managers are ones that are undisciplined and they're inconsistent and they don't care enough about the people that they're managing. So I think you could start with a core strength of I'm a very disciplined person because I'm in operations. And oh, by the way, I learned from operations how much I yearn to have a greater impact on people. Here's the skills I can build on top of my discipline. And it makes you seem like an even more tenable and interesting candidate.
Yeah. This actually is a little bit similar to what our previous friend in physical therapy is going more into management. You have to know the craft. Marina is bringing up a different topic. She says, I want to be a chief of staff. It's regardless of the, not preference specifically in an industry. And I'm open to a new challenge. How do you propose I pitch that? Marina, I had someone who was a recent undergrad, not recent, he was an undergrad student, had been out in the industry for 6 or 7 years and was interested in doing just what you said, being a chief of staff. My suggestion to him first was to find at least 3 others, maybe network, do it on LinkedIn, and find out what their life is like. So you need to learn what are some of the day-to-day must-have skills, because you need some of that vocabulary for your pitch, or you need to find out if this is something that you want to do. And after you do that in LinkedIn, how do you express the pivoting intention? I would start looking for articles that talk about coordinating, orchestrating operations, what chiefs of staff do. Start signaling on LinkedIn that that's the direction that you're going. This is difficult of not speaking about it, but signaling about it and writing about it and putting out some content that can, when someone looks at Marina, your feed, they can kind of tell that you're changing in this direction. Scott, what would you share?
In doing, Tatiana, what you just said, the other good thing about that is you're kind of doing your homework on the industry. It also strengthens, Marina, the explanation of your why. If I was the hiring director for chief of staff, your resume came across my desk and I saw you were a banking professional. It's going to depend on the individual. Some people are really hung up on if you don't have industry experience, right? Some people are like that. But for those that aren't, and I'm not one of those people, I would really want to know a very concise, powerful explanation of why this, why now. Do you have conviction behind doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And doing the homework Tatiana is talking about will make your story crisp and shine and memorable. We all have empathy for somebody who wants to try something different in their life. That's a great thing. You just have to make it clear why it is you want to do it and make it a
Yeah.
selling point.
Back to connecting the dots. Here's what I love about these lives. Mayur is actually in our online KD MBA program. So he's doing just that. So way to go. Not only are you talking about advancing to that business development role, but you're learning with the best in order to do it. I just had a second year physical therapist in our MBA program that was doing the same. Let's take a question from Linda. And after this, I want to start talking about layoffs, getting mentally past that hurdle and starting to pivot and talk about yourself. And Linda says, after 30 years as a mortgage underwriter, I was laid off. Actually, she's helping me transition. And there were no prospects in my field in the foreseeable future. I have a long list of transferable skills, but I haven't had any positive feedback from any of the applications that I've submitted. How can I be successful in a career pivot in this circumstance? Linda, first, let me say that you need to, part of being strong in this is to continue to maybe find different avenues and to not give up, because it sounds like you have incredible experience and you could probably get a lot of energy out of a different field. What would you say, Scott? You've pivoted quite drastically. What advice would we have for Linda to help her move on from career mortgage underwriting to something else?
Well, I think I can give incredibly specific, relevant thought here, because guess what I started my career as, Tatiana?
What?
For Citicorp Citibank, a
You were a
mortgage
banker?
underwriter. I was a mortgage underwriter.
No.
Yes,
stop.
I was.
Depressing.
Way back
I
when.
don't believe that.
Way back when, out of undergrad school, I was a mortgage. I was a mortgage underwriter, and so what I can going back to that, Linda, I've walked a mile in your shoes, and I remember when some of the banking crises of the early '80s hit. I was in the same boat that you were, and I distinctly remember back in that time when I saw the prospects were drying up, and I could see that I wasn't getting a lot of feedback. I went back to really think about really what skills are transferable, or how can I show how good I was in the job. Forget the skill, focus on the performance level. And I remember things changing for me because I was trying to position my all the skill sets that I'd built up in mortgage underwriter that felt too specific at the time. When I started focusing on how I over delivered in every single role as a mortgage underwriter relative, here's the baseline, here's how I over delivered on it. People started getting a picture of, forget mortgage underwriter, this guy's a winner. He over delivers. And in that case, it became not as much about skills as the delta I was performing above the norm, if that makes sense.
I'm just curious though, if Linda can find, would it be helpful? It sounds like she wants to connect to something. What can we, Linda, is there something else in a bank, since you know the industry and the environment, is there something else that you can do, knowing the content and knowing the context so much, that maybe you could be helpful in a different realm, in a different way, and maybe pitching yourself in your local community in some of the banks that you have there? Let me talk a little bit about, we have the economy is not good. Just today, I heard of a second former student that was laid off, one of those sort of no explanation and no warning. And it's happening quite a lot. What are the tips, Scott? And you're probably seeing it out there as well. What do we tell our learners and our colleagues who may be facing the challenge of a career pivot because of their job ending?
Yeah, what I try to tell people is, Captain Obvious here, networking is more important than ever. And leaving the job in which you have been, left from, don't burn any bridges, right? Of course.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help and be vulnerable. And there's ways that you can do, and things you can ask for. For example, let's say that all of a sudden I got fired as a keynote speaker. One of the first things I would do is write up a paragraph, and I would call my friend Tatiana, and I would say, hey, Tatiana, do you mind? I ghost wrote a paragraph for you that I want you to shape and mold. You're my friend. Can you share this on LinkedIn and say, I have a great friend. His name is Scott Mautz. He, just like many people I've making this up, right? He works in the tech industry. He just lost his
Yeah.
job. These are his skills. Let me know if there's anything that you might have that I could share with him. Make it easy for people, especially on LinkedIn, to be your advocates, and don't be afraid to ask for that, right? Would you agree with that, Tatiana?
Oh, and tap the people that have big audiences too. Both you and I have a big reach, and we're the connectors. Or maybe we don't do it publicly, but I just did that today. I messaged my student and I said, who are the faculty that have the connections on Wall Street that we can help you with? Tell me who I can go to and advocate for you. So number one lesson is don't be afraid to ask and be patient, because this, at times I've seen this again and again, it ends up being a blessing quite often, because you're able to reach and stretch yourself in ways that you didn't think were possible too. I'm getting a question here, probably maybe a pivoter. Shayna says, very helpful question on pivoting. She has experience in the nonprofit space, attempting to create a story and sell transferable skills, but she sits in interviews and people say, but do you have X precise experience, struggling to effectively approach this? My recommendation, Shayna, is if you are coming up with a lot, and that's coming up quite often, somehow you need to signal if this is in a specific area, if it's technical writing, or if it's Excel spreadsheets, or if it's basic coding. LinkedIn platform, not because we both are instructors with Scott, go ahead in your free time and take some of those courses. For I will make this open to all of you here. If there's any of you here who are looking for skills that you need to improve, both Scott and I'm offering to open courses for you if we are connected on LinkedIn. It's a very powerful tool. And then when someone looks at your profile, they see that you've been engaged, they see that you've been connected. I highly recommend the course. Maybe Natasha, you can drop it in, called Rock Your LinkedIn Profile. That's free and available to everyone. But really work your profile. And if you're getting a specific question on one precise skill and experience, Shayna, I would go to see if I can try to find it, so then I can speak to it as well.
And if I could add on top of that very quickly, Tatiana, Shayna, also consider highlighting your learning agility. Here's what I mean by that. It's maybe the hottest skill I'm getting asked to talk about a ton right now as a keynoter, which is, if you know you're going into a job and they are looking for precise experience and you don't have it, and you've done what Tatiana has asked, which is right on, you can also highlight your learning agility, meaning give examples of times when you've learned something completely new, and show that you're a lifelong learner, very skilled at taking on new things, and position it as a unique skill that you have, the ability to learn and grow and stay agile by learning new things. You're giving the not so subtle message that, so fine, I don't have special experience X, but I'm a proven successful learner over my life. Those kinds of stories can help.
And these are 3 examples. I love Anita's comment. I just saw it. I've pivoted many times. Stay positive. Every goal has lots of options and many open doors. Bless you.
I love that.
Happy December. Isn't that great when someone notes some of this?
By the way, Anita, I don't have it here with me, but I keep at my desk at home. If I was doing this from home, I would hold up right now a window frame that I keep at my desk as a reminder that for every door that closes, a window of opportunity opens. I have found that to be true in my life for the 54 years I've been on this planet. So thanks for that. That's great.
Wow. I love that. I love that. I like to keep LinkedIn lives under 45 minutes because I know your time is valuable. However, there's many comments that we didn't get to. They are going to be on our feed, and I will personally go back and respond to each and every one of them, because I want you to feel heard if we didn't get to your questions. I also wanted to highlight Scott's LinkedIn newsletter, which is called Lead On. And I love the way that he approaches it. I'll let him talk a little bit about it. The last time I was on LinkedIn Live office hours, I was very lucky to have the amazing Gemma Lee Roberts, who talks a lot about resilience. What some of you may not know, or I mentioned, Gemma named my newsletter. So I wanted to pay it forward. And when Scott said, I'm working on a newsletter, So Gemma was the godmother of my newsletter. I would like to say that I was the godmother of Scott's newsletter. Scott, tell us what you write about every week and what are some of the standard tips that you give away.
That's true. Yeah. And Tatiana, you beat over 15. I put it in a test. You suggested lead on, and I had 15 other. You beat all of them in quantitative testing. So you have a career as a tester. Lead on is a weekly newsletter you can sign up for, and it gives self-leadership and leadership tips. And I break it up into 3 sections: an insight, an implementation, a tool, and an imperfection, a mistake that I have made in the past you could learn from, or that is a common mistake among people. So an insight back with research, an imperfection or a mistake, and an implementation, a specific tool that you can use to help lead better and to help self-lead yourself better. And you get that every week.
I love it. And what I love about Scott, that he does this, he is transparent. When he messes up, he shares it so you can also learn from the mistakes that he's made. Wait, that was not it. I was looking that one of our learners articulated your stealth, show them, and everything always led to here, captured it too. But before we leave, and if you haven't left yet, I promised that we would be sending one of you off, and let me post this specifically. Did we have the book? Yes, we should have the book, right? In the banner.
Yes, should be in the...
I'll go fetch it. But one of the things, tell us a little bit about this book. This is for middle managers to be able to give tips on powering up and moving around and being able to lead and implement. I'm going to post it as a comment here on Lead On. And tell us a little bit about the book, and then we're going to raffle it off.
Yeah, very, very quickly, folks. It's a love letter to middle managers. I noticed that there's a zillion books on the C-suite, how to be a CEO, how to leave at the executive level. There's a zillion books on your first 90 days, how to get off to a fast start. There's almost no books about that big swath called the middle manager in the middle. And when I call middle manager, when I say that, what I mean is anybody who has a boss and is a boss or wants to be one someday and has to lead up, down, and across the organization to be good at it. So the book is basically a playbook, Tatiana. It's filled with information on how to lead up and influence up your boss and your boss's boss, how to influence across and influence your peers over whom you have no formal authority, and how to influence down, those that report to you, as well as how to manage change and all the insight that comes with the unique challenge of what it means to lead from the middle of the organization with pressure around you from all sides. So I'm very proud of it. I hope whoever wins it likes it, and the rest of you go check it out.
I want to say a shout out to whoever wrote this. Thank you. We spent a lot of time on our LinkedIn courses. Scott, pick a number from 1 to 50. Natasha, are you ready? Scott, pick a number.
32.
32. So Natasha is going to look and see and put in the chat who was number 32. Please follow us on our LinkedIn handles, because we both, Scott and I, putting our handles here, go ahead and talk a lot about new courses. We talk about our newsletters. We put a lot of energy out there on a regular basis to try to help you be stronger and lead and better at what you do. Promise going back to a lot of this. Natasha, who do we have coming in? I'm going to have you come in. Hello from us. Oh, wait, hold on. From the US, from us. Listen to me. Natasha, who is it? Are you putting it on the live? So drum roll, everyone. Here it is. Are you putting it in a private chat or in the comments? Should I pull you in? And the winner is... Wait, you're
muted.
You're muted.
Brianne Richardson.
Brianne Richardson. Yay. Brianne Richardson, we're going to keep this open for a little bit. And tell us, give me or put in your address or send it to me on a private note. and we will send you one of Scott's books. We have definitely bypassed my golden rule of staying at 45 minutes, but it's for such a good reason. Having our dear friend and colleague Scott Mautz here with us. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic month of December with all the craziness and emotional drama that comes in. Thanks for joining us. We're going to say goodbye. Come back and, oh, Brianne, she was here. She said, OMG, I love it. Brianne, send me your address and we'll send that over to you too. Heidi said coming in from the US, and I read it coming in from us. Everyone, stay strong, promote yourselves, tell your authentic story, speak with conviction, connect the dots, talk about your transferable skills, and be ready and prepared, whether you're pivoting or you're entering the workforce. Stay strong and hang in there. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great end of the year. Take care.